It's a growing trend in travel, voluntourism. Do-gooders dedicating time and resources, hoping to see the world while supporting a worthy cause. But things are not always what they seem. Tonight, a shocking investigation into suspect orphanages in Nepal. Here's ABC's chief foreign correspondent, Terry Moran.
Welcome to Kathmandu, Nepal, a mecca for mountain climbers and spiritual seekers alike. It is also a major hub for travelers who are lured by the opportunity to give something back, so-called voluntourists.
Hello.
Nepal's many orphanages attract voluntourists from around the world, part of a booming billion-dollar global voluntourism industry, especially popular with young Western backpackers.
It had all sounded really positive, and as an elementary school teacher, I was always interested in volunteering.
Moira Waterfall was 29 when she took a trekking vacation in Nepal. She heard about an orphanage called Happy Home from some fellow hikers. Moira decided to teach English there. She even made her own fundraising website to help the orphanage raise money from outside donors. The man who ran the orphanage was Bishwa Acharya, seen here in this promotional video. Then, one day, a shocking encounter changed everything.
I was just going for a jog. I ran into one of the children that were in the orphanage, and she was with a woman who was old enough to be her mother. Auntie, auntie, they call you auntie, auntie. Bishwa's a bad man, you know, trying to explain to me what happened, but really upset and in broken English. I didn't understand what was happening. I didn't know who this woman was with her. To my knowledge, the majority of these children were orphaned.
On Happy Home's website, the girl was described as an abandoned street child, but she told Moira this was her mother.
She started explaining to me that Bishwa was stealing their stuff, that Bishwa was physically abusing them.
Word spread among the volunteers who helped bring a case against Bishwa Acharya. He was found guilty of severe child neglect.
Nobody wants to believe when you put this much time and energy and love and money into something that you think is good, that it may not be. I mean, it's a horrible, shocking feeling.
Mara says she had personally raised $4,000 for Happy Home, and she says she knows her fellow volunteers had raised tens of thousands more. While there are some legitimate orphanages in Nepal, experts here warn that too often voluntourism fees end up going into the orphanage owners' pockets. And more often than not, the kids aren't actually orphans at all.
They get volunteers to come, they create websites, and of course, you know, the foreigner's heart is just broken, and they just give and give and give.
This is Anna Howe and Martin Punaks. They work for the American NGO Next Generation Nepal. They work with the Nepali government to rescue children from orphanages and bring them to this transit home. Every child here was rescued from an orphanage.
So well-meaning foreigners are
Absolutely.
funding
Exactly.
a trafficking regime.
Yeah.
Here's how it works. Orphanages in Nepal can get thousands of dollars in donations from foreigners, but they need children to get this money. So they send agents into rural villages to convince poor parents to send their kids to the city.
In these remote villages, desperate poverty, a trafficker shows up. What's the pitch?
It could be someone that's got high status, dressed well, promises sponsorship, boarding school, health care.
And the parents turn the children over to the trafficker.
They see this as a way of helping their children to have a better life, but all these promises are false.
That's what Next Generation Nepal says happened to Sushila, Rushila, and Sudip, 3 young siblings from a small village 3 hours from Kathmandu. The organization says the 3 children were rescued from a neglectful orphanage called Hamro Gar in a raid that was actually broadcast on local TV.
Was it a bad place? How? How was it bad?
They say they were beaten.
It hit the bottom of your foot?
Kids tell us they were underfed, even had tuberculosis.
Were the children told to tell the white people that they were orphans?
Yeah.
You were supposed to tell them, no mom, no dad, you were orphans.
UNICEF estimates that 85% of children in orphanages in Nepal have at least one living parent. The Child Welfare Board keeping tabs on these orphanages is like a game of whack-a-mole. Making matters worse, the devastating earthquake that struck just last year, creating more chaos that human rights groups warn could lead to more orphanage trafficking. We noticed that the website for Happy Home was still being updated. Could they still be open for business? Happy Home! Happy Home! My producer went in posing as a potential volunteer. Happy Home! Happy Home! Happy Home! Turns out, Bishwa Acharya has nearly 100 children in his care.
The other day you were telling my translator.
When my producer asked him about the abuse conviction, he blamed it on Western attacks.
Media. Could you explain what you mean by that?
Actually, I was in jail also, 11 months.
For what?
Yes.
What were you in prison for? What were you in prison for?
In
Kidnapping.
Yes.
In addition to the conviction for severe child abuse, Acharya was put on trial for kidnapping and fraud, charges which were ultimately dismissed.
How do you explain the fact that you now have 100 kids in your house, but you have these charges and you have fines you're paying for child abuse? How do you explain that?
Actually, Happy Home is already, we spent more than 10 years here. And the case was, just 1.5 years past, So it might not be true.
But did you ever abuse kids?
No, there was no proof. It's just a propaganda.
Acharya says he is appealing the court decision. When the government does rescue kids, they often hand them over to Next Generation Nepal, who work to reunite them with their families.
So you guys are going home. How does it feel?
Today, it's Rushila, Sushila, and Sudip who are hopeful this is the end of their ordeal.
Happy. Happy.
The children's mother and grandmother say they sent them to an orphanage in Kathmandu in the hopes of an English education, and they were devastated to find out that the children were not being cared for.
Yeah, the 2 rivers mixed there.
Are we close to home?
Yeah.
Today, they're being welcomed home by their grandmother.
Hi, sweetie.
A moment years in the making.
Your grandchildren are home now. How does that feel?
According to Martin Punax, finding children's families can be like finding a needle in a haystack, but the end result is worth it.
It's just wonderful to see them here now in their village with their grandmother.
A happy day for Rushila, Sushila, and Sudip. But there are many more children like them still waiting to go home.
We really want people to come to Nepal, but volunteering in an orphanage is not good because most of them are scams. They're not real orphanages.
For Nightline, I'm Terry Moran in Kathmandu, Nepal.